seconds. They're down by one. Gordon got it! Aaron Gordon with a deep shot. Williams three-quarter court. No good. The Nuggets steal game one. That's a winner for Aaron Gordon. 121 to 119.
That was ridiculous last night. What a finish to the late game in Oklahoma City. An exciting night for the NBA. Iron Eagles so good, by the way. Two thrilling finishes, Boston, New York, followed by Denver and OKC. The road team has won the first three of the second-round series. Game one in the fourth second-round series is tonight between Golden State and Minnesota in the Twin Cities. Yeah, a thrilling night for the NBA playoffs. Also, a not-so-great night for the NBA. I'll get to all of that coming up here in a few minutes. Caps Canes tonight kick off their second-round series a week after Carolina's last playoff game and 6 days after Washington's last game. Seems excessive that we had to wait this long for game one, but we will get to it tonight at Capital One Arena with game one. The voice of Caps Radio, John Walton, will join us today at 12:30. Before that, in roughly 30 minutes, you'll hear my conversation over the weekend with Tarik El-Bashir. So two hockey guests on the show. And then tomorrow, after game one tonight, Emily Kaplan from ESPN, who is flat out one of the best on ice, in-game for any sport interviewers there is out there. She's going to join us on the show early tomorrow after she's a part of the Sean McDonough first crew for ESPN tonight in D.C. for game one. Is she as good as Smoking Al Koken? No, nobody is. But she's as good as there is on any national broadcast. The draft is coming to D.C. in 2027. I had an inkling that this was a possibility last week when we had Joe Maloney on the show. Joe hinted to that happening. Joe used to work for the team. The league, by the way, expecting 1 million people to attend over a 3-day period. That should be a really good thing economically for this city. But you know what? That's 2 drafts away. The draft just completed, which I said I would not grade. I decided to grade anyway to settle a bet. I'll get to that sometime on the show today as well. Took the day off yesterday, not intended. Man, golf is a rough sport. Lower back injury, nerve pain is the worst pain. I've learned 2 things over the years that I will share for those of you that have, nerve pain related to lower back or any other part of your area. Ice over heat, always. And the Aleve Advil thing just doesn't cut it when you have legitimate pain. You need a prescribed hyper jumbo anti-inflammatory. I'm better today. Max, who was here yesterday, who did the show for me yesterday? I couldn't even pay attention.
I forget his name. Lionel?
Oh, was it Lionel?
Something like that, I think.
I'm glad to have Linnell fill in for me whenever I'm out. Linnell's talented, very talented. This from John in Ardmore, PA. That's Mainline, Philadelphia. Love Mainline, Philadelphia. Beautiful town Ardmore is. There are a lot of beautiful towns on the main line. Kevin, I'm a Skins fan lifelong. Listen to you on the app every day and also listen to your podcast. Is the team getting too much attention these days for things that have nothing to do with football? I feel like a new stadium, the draft news, all cover up what was a questionable offseason. I'm glad the attention is positive rather than what we had for 20 years, but it seems they've taken their eye off the ball a little bit. Thank you for that, Mainline John. Interesting take. I've heard a couple of other people say things similarly. Look, I think I said last week with the stadium news, I'm excited, but that's 5 years down the road, man. I mean, we got 5 seasons left at Northwest Stadium in Landover with the most exciting play on the field situation we have had in decades. I said last week, wouldn't it be ironic at the end of the run of the stadium in Landover if the recent memories are the best ever? A couple of championship games, maybe 5, 6, 7 playoff games. Maybe I'm getting carried away. It's possible, more possible than it's ever been. And that there are the best of times and the best of memorable games and moments actually still ahead in the final 5 years of this crappy stadium, which was crappy for many reasons. But one of those reasons is that the team was an embarrassment over its time there. Well, it won't be over its final 5 seasons. It certainly wasn't last year. But mainline, John, I would say this to you. First of all, Dan Quinn and Adam Peters and the football side of the building is not involved. They're not involved in the stadium talks. They're not involved in bringing the draft to D.C. They are focused on the things that matter right now, on the product on the field, football. If you're worried about the karma of kind of being what Washington has become here recently, the Washington Commanders, painful to say that, have become recently, which is the toast of the NFL these days. If you're worried about the karma associated with that when they haven't really won anything of note yet, they had a great season last year. There are plenty of teams, that have had seasons like Washington did last year and don't follow it up or can't follow it up because the competition in their conference or in their division is stiff and even better than what they are. But remember, we had a very low bar to clear. And I think for the rest of the league, there was this bar that was essentially the curb that if Washington cleared it as an organization, it would start to get some of that attention, that it didn't get for so many years. And I've said this many times in the past, but I wouldn't call it apples to apples in terms of the comparison, but for many years after the 60s Lombardi's, iconic, legendary, dynastic teams, the Packers weren't very good. They went 20 plus years of not being a really good team. And we're talking really post Lombardi. Now they went to the playoffs here and there. They went to the playoffs in 72, played Washington in George Allen's playoff Super Bowl run at RFK Stadium on Christmas Eve, 1972. And then they had a couple of other playoff appearances, but they weren't a good franchise. They had fallen into disrepair. And then Brett Favre came to the Packers, and Mike Holmgren became their coach, and they became, a contender, and they ended up going to a Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl, going to another one, losing it. And then, that dovetailed into the Aaron Rodgers era, et cetera. And I remember at the time in the 90s when the Packers became real contenders again, there was a real excitement around the league because the Packers had been a storied franchise. Look, I'm not suggesting that there are a lot of young people necessarily that feel this way, but there are a lot of people around the league that are 40 or older, 45 years of age or older, that are actually kind of happy. I'm not talking about Skins fans. I'm talking about NFL fans, that Washington is relevant because of their on-field product again. There's this saying about, various sports, boy, this sport is better when these teams are good. I'm not saying Washington's Dallas or Washington's Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's really never fallen off and never had the kind of period that Washington's gone through. But Washington is, on that second group of teams where the league's better when they're good and they're contending. But back to your, note, Mainline, John. I think that part of what you're suffering from is you are still, suffering from Snyder syndrome, the syndrome in where you essentially the default is you're conditioned to expect the worst at all times. Any shred of positive was treated skeptically, certainly for 10, 12 years, and it deserved the skepticism. They earned it. But he's gone, and we've been cured of that. You got to move on from that. Get over it. It doesn't mean because we don't have, Snyder syndrome anymore, doesn't mean that everything will be good and everything will be successful in the future. It just means that we can believe legitimately that good things and success are in store. We don't have to suspend reality to have a conversation about the team. For all of those years, we talked about it all the time. We've got to have, a suspension of reality to talk about the draft, to talk about the game coming up this week, to talk about why, they lost and didn't go for the 4th and 3 that they should have gone for. We had to suspend the reality that as long as the team was owned by Dan Snyder, there wasn't going to be legitimate chance for success. We don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to do that. Dan Quinn and Adam Peters in the football operation is a football operation. They're not, operating at the whims of somebody's marketing ideas. They're not, being brought into meetings to talk about how great their football team is to try to sell suites. But, there's also one part of John's email to me that does ring a little bit true in that, look, they've got a stadium deal. There's still the city council that needs to clear it. There is the draft coming in 2027. And we understand that none of these things happen as long as Dan Snyder had continued to own the team. That's a lock. None of these things would have happened. But would they have happened had Jaden Daniels not been available at number 2 for Washington in the 2024 draft? The ownership is completely different. It's competent. It's also, filled with, at this point, upon further review, and I don't think we have to have that review anytime soon, much better people who treat people much differently than the last organization. The last organization wasn't just incompetent. They were bad people throughout the organization. That's what kind of he looked for. He looked for dumb and mean, a terrible combination in business, and arrogant. Arrogant being the worst part of that in so many ways, because the combination of arrogant and dumb is the worst kind of combination in a person or in a business, and we had to bear witness to it for 20-something years. That's not what this organization is, which is why we don't have to suspend reality. But what's also true is Josh Harris is fine. Mitch Rail's fine. Magic Johnson fine. Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, they've done a really nice job. But if they didn't have number 2 overall, if Greg Zuerlein misses the kick on Christmas Eve 2023 and Washington doesn't get a chance to draft Jaden Daniels or any of the top quarterbacks in one of, right now, what appears to be one of the better quarterback drafts in recent memory, well, I don't know if the stadium deal is moving forward. I don't know if the draft is here in 2027. That's a possibility too. What changed everything, things were already changed for the better. But what really ramped it up and made Washington the toast of all NFL conversations these days, and they are a part of a lot of conversations these days. They are. And wait until a week from tomorrow when the NFL schedule comes out and you see our team plastered across multiple 4, 5, 6 maybe primetime opportunities, 6, 7, 8 standalone opportunities, maybe an international game, maybe a Thanksgiving or Christmas game, maybe both. And we had Mike North, the guy who is involved in making the schedule on the show a couple of weeks back. I'll play some of that for those of you that missed it as we get closer to the schedule and closer to my mock schedule towards the end of this week or maybe Monday. I like to get it out before some of the leaks or some of the actual official news about the schedule comes out, because I don't want to, be able to do my schedule already knowing one of the games. But bottom line is, man, it's a better organization. We don't have to deal with what we dealt with for all of those years, knowing that we have competence, we have humility, we have good in the organization. None of that guarantees consistent, sustained success on the field, but it certainly doesn't eliminate it from it being a possibility, which is what we had for all that time. But the fact that some of the, good fortune has gone their way, and it started last year, on a late April, Thursday night, having the number 2 pick in the draft and having Jaden Daniels be available to them, that is imperative. I love the trenches too. I love good offensive line play. I love good defensive line play. Bottom line is, if you don't have the quarterback, you can't be a sustained, successful, contending team. You can have a 10-7 season. You might even win a playoff game or two, but you're not going to be sustained year over year over year. If you want to look at Jalen Hurts and say he's not a good quarterback, you're nuts. He is a good quarterback. All right, he's not Patrick Mahomes, but look at what the Chiefs did last year with a terrible offensive line. Terrible offensive line. And they still made it back to the Super Bowl. And that's where Washington is now. I'm not saying he's Mahomes. Not yet, anyway. I am saying that as long as he's upright and healthy, it's going to be hard for this team not to be a contending team. And to sort of deserve right now being, the center of a lot of NFL conversations. That one move, that one pick, that one night, that's what really got us to where we are today. But we still would have been in a much better place had they drafted Drake May or Michael Penix Jr. All right. I did want to briefly talk about the NBA games last night. Bear with me because the NBA playoffs have gotten pretty good. But something happened in one of the NBA games last night that is not good for the NBA. And it kind of, there's been multiple games where it's been for a certain group, and I would say older basketball fans that remember when 5 players on offense participated on offense, when, there were fewer 3-point shots taken. But let me just quickly mention the last game of last night, the Nuggets over the Thunder. You do have a situation still in the NBA, and we'll see if this holds up, where experience trumps youth athleticism, length, fresher bodies, pretty much most of the time in the NBA. The real talented teams that you see coming and you think are ready to win a championship now, Houston was just ridiculously talented, athletic, long, depth. And it looked like Golden State was dead to right heading into Game 7. But Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Jimmy Butler, experience over youth, and experience really trumping perhaps a better talented team. A more talented team. Last night, Game 1, best team in the NBA during the regular season, Oklahoma City, swept their first-round opponent, waiting for Denver, who knocked off the Clippers in Game 7, which I'll just add real quickly. James Harden is one of the worst playoff performers in big playoff games in the history of the game. I wrote down some of these things. James Harden, 42 playoff games in his career with as many turnovers as made field goals. He only made 2 field goals in Game 7 the other night. 35 playoff games with under 4 field goals made. 55 playoff games with under 5 field goals made. I've never seen somebody be as much of a slow learner or just be completely disinterested in adapting a regular season game that is Hall of Fame to a playoff style game, which is pedestrian, which is his. He's horrendous to watch in the playoffs. Horrendous. He'll make a lot of shots. He'll make a lot of plays. He is painful to watch. He just does not understand the difference between regular season basketball and playoff basketball. I mean, he was a complete train wreck in Game 7. They had no chance with him on the floor. They would have been better had he been hurt and not played. But anyway, last night, the Nuggets beat the Thunder. This game was never in doubt throughout. Like, the Thunder had double-digit leads for much of the game, and then the Nuggets would make a run and get it down to 7, get it down to 5, and then it would go right back to double digits. They had an 11-point lead with just over 3 minutes to go. But Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, champions. They've been there. They've done it. Nikola Jokic had 42 points, 22 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 blocked shots, and a steal. I mean, the dude is just all-world, all-time great. And he got them back into the game with Jamal Murray and with a lot of players that were making players. By the way, you know who's playing great in the postseason? Who saw this coming? I didn't. Russell Westbrook, at 36 years old, is playing the best basketball in the postseason he's played in forever. I would credit the high IQs of Nikola Jokic and players like Jamal Murray to what Russell Westbrook is doing right now. But they came back, and there was a strategy that Oklahoma City employed at the end of that game where they were fouling up 3. It's an okay strategy. It's either you're going to give up the 3 or you're going to foul before they take the 3 when you're up 3 in the final, 17 or so seconds of the game. The problem is they were doing it in the backcourt instead of letting clock run off. Like, just not smart. It started with them up 117 to 114, and they fouled, Jokic. Then they fouled Aaron Gordon, and they were fouling too quickly instead of letting clock run off. Eventually, if you have that foul strategy up 3, you got to make sure that you feel like you're not going to miss a free throw. It's one thing to foul up 3 with, say, under 10, under 8 seconds to go. But to do it starting with 17 seconds to go and to do it quickly without letting clock run off means you're going to have to make a lot more free throws than just 2. Because they're going to foul you after they make both shots. And eventually, Chet Holmgren missed 2, up 1, with 9.1 seconds left. And the Nuggets came down, and Aaron Gordon, who had a buzzer-beating dunk in Game 4 against the Clippers, knocked down on a really good play by Westbrook to pass the ball, make the right play to pass it to Aaron Gordon. Gordon knocked down a 25-foot 3 with 1.8 seconds to go. And then Oklahoma City, with no timeouts, had to put up a three-quarter court shot, and they lost the game. It was the definition of a game being stolen. That was their first lead through since midway through the first quarter, and they trailed by double digits for much of the night. Experience over youth in the postseason. Also, I'd hang that on the coach a little bit. I don't mind the foul strategy. If that's what's worked for you, you can't foul people in the backcourt. You got to let them burn some clock. They're not shooting from the backcourt. You don't have to worry about catching them in the shooting motion. And then we go to the first game last night. Knicks, Celtics. The Celtics had a 20-point second half lead. If you're just tuning into the NBA playoffs, a 20-point lead in an NBA game in the regular season is really nothing. In the playoffs, it should be something, but it's not if you're going to shoot 63s and only make 15 of them. That's what Boston did. They missed 10 in a row when they were up 20, and they allowed the Knicks back in the game. And this is the part where old man get off your lawn comes out a little bit, and a lot of people, sometimes yours truly as well, they missed a record 45 three-pointers in a playoff game. That set the NBA record. Well, why, when they were missing all these shots, didn't they take it to the bucket? Well, because that's what they do. They're an ISO team. They get their best players, Tatum and Brown, into matchups that they like, and these dudes typically settle for threes or draw the defense and kick to somebody else who shoots a 3. They missed 45 three-pointers in a game. They shot 60. They had 97 total field goal attempts in the game. 60 of them were threes, and they shot 25% from behind the arc. What's really scary about this game is they missed 45 three-pointers and still almost won the game. They went to overtime and lost by 3. So the question, and I'm listening to a lot of the recaps of this game early this morning. Will Boston change their strategy? Will they drive the ball? Will they go into the post? Probably not, because shooters never think the next one isn't going in. They always believe the next one's going in. And if they missed 45 and only lost by 3, there's no way they believe they'll ever miss 45 again, that they'll ever shoot 25% again. By the way, the Knicks are a heavy ISO team too. And Brunson takes some terrible shots. He just made his last night. Big ones. The Knicks steal game 1. I would not go putting a lot of my money on the Knicks to win this series. And I would not put a lot of money on the Celtics all of a sudden changing from who they are. This is who they are. They just shoot an S load of threes. The NBA playoffs, there you go. They're fantastic. And sometimes they're troubling. And last night, watching the Celtics just bomb 3 after 3 and miss them all was really interesting. All-time interesting in terms of that, the way that goes, especially for those that can't stand that kind of basketball. I mean, it was hard to watch. All right. When we come back, you'll hear Tarik El-Bashir. He was on with me over the weekend on my podcast previewing Canes Caps. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. Game 1 tonight. Caps, by the way, of the 8 teams remaining, have the longest odds to win the Stanley Cup. They are also an underdog in this series, despite having home ice advantage. Game 1 is tonight. John Walton, who will be on the call for Caps Radio on our sister station, 106.7 The Fan. He'll join us at 12:30 today. Tarik El-Bashir joined me on my podcast over the weekend to preview the series. Tarik, of course, with Monumental Sports, but also does a really good job on ice for the Turner games, TBS, TNT, etc. I started off by just going back to the Montreal series and asking Tarik why they won and why they won in 5 games.
Kevin, I feel like the series, and I think the players and even Coach Carberry would tell you, was probably a little closer than a 5-game series. Game 1 could have gone either way. The overtime winner by Alex Ovechkin, that game had almost slipped away from Washington. Some of the other ones were kind of dicey and could have gone either way in the third period. But I think in the end, the deeper, more experienced team prevailed. The right team won the series. I feel like the great equalizer was twofold. When the Capitals were at home and Spencer Carberry could get his matchup, the matchup that he wanted. He wanted the Pierre-Luc Dubois line out against the Nick Suzuki line. They did a really good job of neutralizing what was one of the best offensive lines of the entire regular season. That Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, Uri Slavkovsky line was dangerous.
Yeah.
And from the Four Nations tournament on to the end of the regular season, it actually was the best. They were a plus 15. Scoring 24 goals, I believe. But when they were at home, when Washington was at home, Carberry was able to manipulate the lineup and did a really, really nice job with that. And Dubois did a really nice job keeping those guys in check. Jacob Chikrin and John Carlson also deserve a lot of credit in that matchup. They were out there deployed quite a bit against the Suzuki line. Number 2, when your goaltender is playing the way he is, and I'm talking about Logan Thompson here. I know there was an injury scare there, and Charlie Lindgren had to come in for a little bit. But when your goaltender is playing the way Thompson is, you can do great things. You and I have talked about this so many times in the past. Goaltenders just play such a big role, particularly this time of year. And right now, Thompson is arguably the best goalie in the tournament in terms of
really,
overall body of work this season, but how he's playing right now.
Look, you know this, and I've said this to you many times before. Tarik's line, and sure to many others, but including me many years ago, hockey at this point in the year shouldn't be called hockey. It should be called goalie. But is he really right now, with the way he's playing, the best goaltender remaining in the postseason?
Statistically, he's probably in the top 3. But I would say in terms of, and it's harder to measure this, in terms of making the timely saves, the saves that keep a game from getting tied or, allow your team to stay ahead. He's making those stops, and he's making the really difficult stops. But more importantly, he's doing it when his team needs it the most. And, he's playing the way, Kevin, that he looked in December and January when he was, in the conversation with Connor Hellebuck for the Vezina Trophy. And again, when you're the Capitals and you've got good offense, you got a very good defense that's played together all season long. Marty Ferravari is out for the playoffs. That's a big loss. But for the most part, it's the same guys. You're playing Carberry's system. You got great coaching. But when you have that X factor in goaltending, playing at the level that Thompson is, watch out. It's way too early to talk about, how far this team could go. But if I'm the rest of the league, I'm looking at how the Capitals got by Montreal, and I'm going, if Logan plays the way he did against Montreal, against Carolina, the Capitals are going to be a problem. They could be playing a long time this spring.
What is it about LT Whenever somebody's first name begins with an L and the last name begins with a T, it's always LT. I mean, the all-time LT is Lawrence Taylor, but LaDainian Tomlinson was LT, and Logan Thompson is LT. So I wanted to ask you about Dylan Strome, who's got 7 points, and I think he's second in the postseason right now, and the rest of the guys have played 6 games.
Points. And,
9 points. 9 points. 7 assists, 2 goals.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, that's what I meant. Just compare him to Nicholas Backstrom in Backstrom's heyday.
Yeah, different players. I would say there are similarities, and the similarity that really stands out to me, Kevin, between Backstrom and Strome is both players play with the type of poise that they are able to slow down the game around them. Neither one of them are burners. Like, they're not fast. They're not going to overpower you. Their shot is not like so elite that he's just going to rip the puck past you the way like an Alex Ovechkin will. But he makes plays and creates space for himself by slowing the game down. And now that I've mentioned this, Kevin, you're going to notice this. When he gets the puck and he's in a tight window, he's in a tight space, he's able to twist and turn and use his body and use his sense of timing to just kind of elude defenders and just open up that eighth of a second, that fifth of, half of a second even, that allows him to gain the space to operate and make a quick pass to a teammate. Backstrom was the maestro on the wall. I mean, he could do that better than just about anyone. I'm not going to say that Strome is in that category yet, but at his age, he's still getting better, and he's getting a lot better every year. I mean, the Capitals, you want to talk about a find. I mean, they signed him off the scrap heap from Chicago. I don't know what Chicago was thinking letting Dylan Strome walk a few years ago, but he's a legit number one center. And right now, his confidence is as high as I have seen it. You can see it when he's got the puck on his stick. His head's up and he's reading the play, and he knows he's going to dangle it like he's got the puck on string, and he's going to make the right play. And he did repeatedly in that Montreal series. I mean, again, I don't know where things are going to go here, but he's a front runner right now for the best player on the Capitals. I mean, I know I just talked about LT, but like if this team goes a long way, like he could be the playoff MVP based on the first series.
Yeah, I mean, I asked you because I had no clue, but I was reading about how great he's been this year, and he had 82 points this year, 53 assists, 29 goals in the regular season. And I just pulled up Backstrom's career before I reached out to you. He only had 3 seasons in his entire career that were better, points total wise than Strome's season this year. So I was just curious if there was a comparison. So anyway, before we get to Monday and the next series, Tommy and I were talking about this on the show yesterday. Tom Lavero and I were talking about just getting through this first round against Montreal was a bit of a psychological hurdle. Maybe not for every player on the team, and maybe not even the coach, because he hasn't been around here for everything that fans and some of the players and certainly the owner have experienced over the years of not advancing past the round you're supposed to advance past. And it had been 7 years since they had won a series. My question to you is, now that they've won a series, is the pressure off heading into the Carolina series, or do you feel like to sort of make the most out of this season and for people to steer, to keep people away from being critical of the playoff result, they have to win another series? Because they're actually an underdog in the next series.
Which is also crazy to me. I noticed that this morning. I do not understand how they are an underdog to a team they finished double digits in terms of standings points ahead of in the regular season. But Vegas feels very strongly about Carolina, and not to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, but I mean, if you look at, to me, statistically, the 3 best teams in the playoffs right now, I think Carolina and Washington are in that top 3. So yeah, I don't really understand. You look comparing Washington and Carolina, the numbers, goals for, goals against, power play, penalty, it's all very similar. But anyway, in terms of pressure, no, I think the pressure's on these guys. I don't think they feel like they're playing with house money. I think they know that they won the Eastern Conference, and for long stretches were in the mix for the President's Trophy because they've caught lightning in a bottle. You don't have many years like this. The Capitals have had some really, really good years where they, won President's Trophies and flamed out in the playoffs.
Right.
And I think they will always live with some of that regret. I think, especially the old heads, the guys like Ovi and Carlson and Wilson, like they're looking around the room going, boys, this doesn't happen every year. Like we got an invitation to the dance and now we're on to the second round. Like, let's not blow this because we have no idea what's going to be around the corner, what could happen next year. Like, we got to maximize this. Their chemistry is off the charts. Carberry is definitely a big X factor in terms of just how well he manages his players and how well he manages matchups, and just really a good X's and O's coach, and just knows how to communicate and say the right things. And, Ovi, 39 and a half years old, just had an incredible season. At some point, Father Time is coming for him, Like, if I'm the Capitals, I'm looking at this as the best opportunity to make history, to solidify legacies since 2018.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And by the way, what a memorable season it would be if they just advanced, another round or two in combination with, the chasing down of Gretzky and the passing of Gretzky. All right.
Yeah.
So you've talked a little bit about it in that last answer, but just what are the keys to beating Carolina? It sounds like you think the Caps are a better team. So what do they need to do to win this next round best of 7?
Well, they don't have a whole lot of control over how the goaltender plays. But again, if LT is the best player on the ice for long stretches, that is going to really, really matter. I think they do have the edge in goal. Carolina is an interesting team. A lot like the Capitals, they don't have star players. They don't have like a big headliner, oh my God, all-star, 5-time all-star. Sebastian Aho, nice player, really good player. But like, you don't think of him as like a first team, all NHL type player. They have a lot of depth. They like to play the game very, very fast. They make life hard on the goaltender by funneling everything to the net. You will notice, Kevin, they shoot from anywhere and everywhere at all times. They like to work the goaltender and then hunt for those second chance opportunities and then bury them when they do find them. So I would say goaltending, if LT can play the way that he has, that again is a big X factor, always is this time of year. I would say for the Capitals, it's going to be boxing out in front of their own net. There's no way to suppress shots really against Carolina. They are going to throw everything and the kitchen sink at you. The key is going to be LT making the first save, putting the puck into a safe area, and then the defenseman and even the center, whoever is in that defensive coverage area, either clearing the puck, making a quick decision to get it back going the other direction, but just not allowing it to lie around and create those second chance rebound opportunities, because Carolina is the best team in the league at winning those battles 6 feet in front of the net. So that's another one. And the Capitals struggle for long stretches getting out of their own end against Montreal, and that really limited how much time they were able to spend in the offensive end with their better players. I think that's going to be a challenge for them, is going to be breaking the puck out against Carolina's heavy forecheck, but they've got to figure it out. They sort of figured it out towards the end of that Montreal series, but I'd like to see them have good control over that from the start. Clean breakouts, quick ups, getting the puck going north, and not spending too much time in your own end. When the Capitals got in trouble against Montreal, it was because the D-man went to retrieve a puck, passed it up to the winger, it didn't get out. It came back in, and Montreal was able to sustain its offensive zone pressure and would eventually break down the Capitals and get a goal.
All right, two more.
I think for
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was saying for the Capitals to succeed, they're going to have to get that puck out of their own end and going up in the other direction as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
All right, last two. First, give me a player that you think, is sort of an X factor in this series for the Caps.
I'm going to go with Anthony Beauvillier, relative newcomer to the team, obviously acquired at the deadline. He is tailor-made for these types of moments. I thought he was very good in the Montreal series. I think there's
game one, right?
for him.
Game one, he had a huge goal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He had a huge goal, and he also had
the
an assist to Ovi on the overtime winner.
Right.
Yeah. He is a dog on a bone. He is dogged and determined and plays on his toes over his skates. Like he invites contact. He dishes out contact. He's not a very big man, but he is tailor-made for the playoffs. He's had some great playoff runs with other teams in the past. 2 years in a row for the Islanders, he was one of their best players in the postseason. For me, he's the X factor. I thought he got to his game during stretches in Montreal. I think he's going to be better against Carolina.
All right, prediction.
Capitals in 7. And here's what I think is going to happen. I think everyone is going to hold serve at home, and I think it's going to come down to that last game in Washington, and that's what you play the entire year for, right, is to have home ice advantage, where Carberry is one of the best in terms of manipulating lineups and kind of anticipating what the other coach is trying to do and then counteracting it. Having home ice is going to be massive for the Capitals. They're going to win it in 7 at home in D.C. and move on to play either Florida or Toronto in the conference final.
Thanks for doing this, Tarik. As always, hopefully we are talking before an Eastern Conference Final series in a week or so. Appreciate it. Hope you're well.
Kevin, give me a call anytime.
Tarik El-Bashir, everybody. Always good to have Tarik on. John Walton will join us at 12:30 today to preview Game 1 and preview the series against Carolina as well. When we come back, a not surprising cut of a future Hall of Famer. That's next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, last night, the Washington Nationals were rained out. They will re-rack today and take on the Cleveland Guardians twice in a doubleheader right here on the Team 980. Pregame starts with Charlie and Dave, starts at 3:05. 2 thrilling NBA finishes last night. The Knicks rally from a 20-point deficit to beat the Boston Celtics in overtime, 108-105. And the Nuggets fight back to steal a win off Oklahoma City. Jokic put up 42 points and 22 rebounds. Toronto Maple Leafs goaltender Anthony Stolarz exited the game last night midway through the second period and was sent to the hospital with concussion-like symptoms after taking a puck to the mask and an elbow to the head. He has since been released. The Maple Leafs win last night 5-4. The Washington Capitals will finally take on the Carolina Hurricanes after nearly a week off. Pregame at 6:45 on 106.7 The Fan. Logan Thompson expected to get the start. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1, and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
John Orand, our favorite sports business reporter and columnist, will jump on with us at 11. We'll talk NFL draft. We'll talk NFL schedule, which comes out a week from tomorrow. But draft here in D.C. Will be part of the topic. Yesterday, the Ravens did something that I think was expected. They released Justin Tucker after 13 years in Baltimore, after a certainly by the numbers Hall of Fame worthy career, although it's tough to get in as a kicker. But they released him after a 13-season run in Baltimore. And look, his career's in jeopardy as well, in part because he hasn't kicked well recently. You know, before we get to the real reason he was released yesterday at just 35 years old, he's coming off easily the worst year of his career from a field goal percentage standpoint. He over 90% as a kicker going into the 2024 season, all-time best field goal percentage in NFL history. He still has that at 89.1%, but he was 22 of 30 last year, 73.3%, which was the lowest by far of his NFL career. He missed 5 field goals over 50 yards away. This is the holder of the longest field goal in NFL history at 66 yards, and a player who made 67 consecutive kicks, an NFL record in the fourth quarter or in overtime. Quite amazing. 65, excuse me. It ended when he missed a 67-yard field goal that came up just short in November of 2022 against Jacksonville. But Tucker made 65 consecutive field goal attempts in fourth quarters or overtimes, longest such streak in NFL history. But the issue with Justin Tucker is that there are 16 massage therapists in the Baltimore area that have accused him of sexually inappropriate behavior during bodywork sessions. The allegations, which Tucker has denied, have not led to anything other than allegations. But these were allegations from not 1 or 2 massage therapists, but from 16. Ravens GM Eric DeCosta said yesterday about Tucker's release, it was a football decision. A team citing character issues as a reason for the player's release puts itself at risk, actually, of a grievance if the player ends up being cleared of any wrongdoing. You know why he is being released. One off season would not have caused the release of Justin Tucker. Now, did he have a season in 23 or 22 that rivaled some of the seasons where he was 90% plus? He was 94.6% on field goal percentages back in 21. He was 89.7 in 2020, 96.6 in 2019. So the performance had fallen off a bit. And they had, some issues with Justin Tucker. It looked like he had the yips a little bit, especially on field goals of 50 or longer, which used to be no-brainers. But there's no doubt that the concern over these allegations are a part of it as well. What's interesting is just to consider how that, and character is part of the judgment for Hall of Fame, how that will end up hurting his Hall of Fame case. He does have a Hall of Fame case. There are only 2 kickers in the Hall of Fame, Morten Andersen and Jan Stenerud. Most people believe that Adam Vinatieri will eventually be in the Hall of Fame. Justin Tucker easily with the best field goal percentage makes of all time. And again, that dropped this year a little bit from what it was an overall overwhelming advantage on field goal percentage makes. You've got the 65 consecutive in the fourth quarter or overtime. You've got the longest field goal in NFL history. Justin Tucker has made 7 Pro Bowls, and he's been named to the All-Pro first team 5 times. That's much more than Stenerud or Morten Andersen in terms of the All-Pro teams. And by the way, 2 more than Adam Vinatieri and 4 more Pro Bowls than Adam Vinatieri. So he does have an on-the-field case for being a Hall of Fame player. And look, time will tell on these allegations and whether or not they will hurt. And he's at least 5 years away from being eligible anyway. And sometimes those other things can diminish just a tad. But man, you talk about a change in narrative on a player, a guy who is, an operatic singer and piano player and the whole thing, and all that he's done in the community after all these years, and the reputation that he had has come tumbling down, crashing down. They drafted a kicker. They drafted a kicker by the name of Tyler Loop this year out of Arizona, so they have their replacement in-house. When we come back, John Oran from Puck News will join us. We'll talk about the impacts of the 2027 draft on Washington, D.C., and we are a week away from the NFL schedule unveiling. We'll get John's thoughts on what may happen there as well. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We are also free and live on the Odyssey app, and you can watch us now as we are streamed on the Team 980's YouTube page. Just hit the subscribe button and the like button for us. The draft is going to be here in 2 years. It'll be wrapped up in 2 years. And the expectations are that 1 million people will come to DC or will participate as, spectators at the NFL draft in 2027. 3 days. That would be an average of about 333,000 a day. It's obscene to even think about those numbers, but they certainly seem possible after what we've seen the last couple of years, especially in Detroit. And a week from tomorrow, the NFL schedule will be unveiled. To talk about these things and a lot more, my good friend, John Orand. John is a columnist, a correspondent for Puck News. You can follow John on X, on Twitter, at @Orand_Puck. You can read him at Puck News. He does a great job with a podcast called The Varsity, where you can get that wherever you get your podcasts. He joins us right now. So before we get to 2027 and the draft here, just tell me real quickly the final numbers, if you have them, from Green Bay in terms of attendance. And then I'm assuming it was another, crazy ratings number television-wise.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of the draft, Kevin, is like you just have to get these storylines that run through. And the Shedeur Sanders being a storyline just made people tune on day 2, and especially on day 3. I mean, if you recall that back in 2020, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I wish I had pulled them before this. But in 2020, that was the COVID draft. When everybody was Roger Goodell was zooming from his basement, and there was nothing else on television, no NBA playoffs, and so the viewership for 2020 will almost never be matched at all. And this year was number 2 by far. And day 3 of this year, because of that storyline of Deion's kid, was the most watched day 3 in the history of the NFL draft. And so it was, that what ends up really working on this is, people like you and me are going to sit and watch, the first couple of rounds and try to figure out what teams are going to get. But, all of a sudden my wife will walk into the room and she will see a draftee break down crying when he gets picked, and then she'll get sort of drawn into the storyline there. And having this one massive player just continuously drop was a big enough of a storyline that people really tuned into it.
My wife walked through our family room where the draft was on Thursday night, and she just said, "Oh, the draft is on tonight?" And I said, "Yep, and it's on tomorrow night, and it's on Saturday." And then she quickly looked at the screen and she said, "Oh my God, what are they doing?" I said, "They've been doing this for a few years now. They hold these things in cities." And I said, "There are 250 to 300,000 people there." And she said, "In Green Bay, Wisconsin?" And I said,
"Isn't that crazy?"
"Yes, yes." And she goes, "Who would do that?" And I said, "Well, a lot of people apparently will do this." So how is 1 million a reasonable number for DC in 2027?
DC, Maryland, Virginia, and the beauty of what Green Bay taught us. Also, you saw this in Nashville a couple of years ago, is that people come in for this event. I mean, it's not quite a Super Bowl, let's be honest, but you have markets that go out there and really bid on having this event, and just really the idea that this was announced in the Oval Office shows that it's, all 32 NFL teams want to be able to host a draft. And one of the things locally that I'm still sort of getting my head around, we haven't seen this in 25 years. In 25 years, we were kryptonite to any big NFL event, because partly because the NFL just didn't trust the ownership that was here to pull off the event and make it work. And we now have a competent, I don't know what's going to happen over the next 10 years, but there's a sense that we have a really competent ownership in place that makes it much easier for Roger Goodell to come down last week for the RFK press conference, and it makes it much easier for him to come down yesterday for that for the Oval Office ceremony. And so it's that's just something as a local kid that still is just like wild to see.
If there are 1 million people, and by the way, a lot of those people will be the same people that are there on night one, right? I mean, when they say 1 million, it's the
Of course,
3
yeah.
days of attendance in aggregate, but a lot of those people are going all 3 days. Do you have any information on what percentage is projected to be from outside the DMV?
I haven't seen that, but again, like if you go, anybody that looks at the draft, when they there are pockets of fans from every single city there.
Right.
This is a destination place that people want to go to, and so Green Bay and Lambeau was a destination. Nashville was a destination, and I really believe like Washington D.C. and the National Mall is going to be something that is going to be a destination that's going to draw people in, so they can go to the event and then do, whatever they want to do outside of it.
Back to the TV. By the way, I asked that question because that's going to be the real economic driver. Not that, people from the DMV being downtown, spending money, but the hotels and the restaurants for people from out of town for 3 days. Let's just call it, if it's a third of the audience from out of town, that's significant to the city economically.
Oh, absolutely, and even like locally, you get, it becomes like a bachelor party weekend almost, where you get people that come into the city. Maybe they won't go out, and then they'll grab a hotel. So it's anytime, and DC can handle these crowds. It handles these crowds these types of crowds all the time. So it's not going to tax the local market here.
Yeah, we're talking to John Orand. The bachelor party, the Nashville draft was the bachelorette party. That's the bachelorette party
right.
of capital of the United States. By the way, back to the TV ratings with Shedeur. What was interesting about what you said, and it's totally, logical and intuitive, but how many people were knocking ESPN, knocking Mel Kiper for focusing so much on the Shedeur Sanders? And I was sitting there thinking to myself, you guys don't get it. This is what's driving the continued massive ratings. And as long as he doesn't get picked, it'll continue to be that. But there was a lot of criticism of ESPN's coverage in particular. Did you take note of that?
I did take note of that, and I unwarranted criticism as somebody that comes up with columns all the time. That was the storyline. I mean, somebody who drops out of the first round into the fifth round, and not only just somebody that drops that far, but Deion's son. Of course, that's a storyline. It's a massive storyline. But one of the things I love about the draft is that the hardcore fans are watching NFL Network. Pretty passionate fans are watching ESPN, and I love having ABC on because it's something that, like, I referenced my wife earlier. Like, she'll come in and she likes those sort of stories that they weave about these players. So the draft is so unique because it really is just somebody going to the podium and calling names, but they're able to get 3 different productions that are tailored to 3 different segments of the audience, and it's turned into just a massive deal. It's really incredible if you think about it.
It's really so incredible. It is the single biggest non-game sports event that's carried and watched, right? There's not even a close second. Am I missing one?
That isn't I don't think you're missing anything. No. And if you look at the NFL, the combine doesn't get anywhere close to that in terms of TV numbers, but it does okay for right. Just watching people run up and down the field. You referenced the schedule release. People are going to tune in to watch. They've turned the schedule release into a day of programming. The whole idea, the NFL years ago set out to try to be a 12-month a year sport, and what they needed is what they call in the business sort of flagpoles to do it. The NFL draft obviously is a flagpole. And they've turned the schedule release into a mini flagpole. They've turned the combine into the mini flagpole. The start of training camp is going to be another one, and then we're going to be off and running again. The NFL, everything that they've done from a media standpoint over the past 20, 25 years has just been it's turned out to be gold.
I remember when it was first, televised, and it was on ESPN, and this is before a lot of us even had cable, and you're like, oh my God, I just want the cable to watch the draft. And all of that is so interesting. And I've talked about this every year, John. It's for something that we as football fans and even the people that are paid to do this get wrong the most. Like two-thirds of the players picked will ultimately not amount to much in the NFL, but it's just something riveting about these few days. All right.
So if you talk to the ESPN executives, they would be really upset that all I did is reference the Sanders storyline, because they said for the first time in I forget how long, in a while, every single team had a first round pick, and the idea that you had like 32 fan bases, all like with hope, and that they're convinced that also helped drive viewership this year, because it just every team was involved, and you're hoping that your team gets better, and you're sitting around and watching that. So there's so many different great storylines about this that I think are pretty cool.
All right. Week from tomorrow night, and usually we don't get the date, and we got it during the draft, the actual schedule release date. Usually they kind of pop up 3 days before, and they're like, all right, it's going to happen on Thursday night, but they scheduled this out for some reason. Maybe it's done. I had this guy Mike North on my show maybe 3 weeks ago.
Great.
John, excellent guest, and you know how much I love that stuff, and you love that stuff too. And one of the things he said is it sometimes isn't done until, completely done until the commissioner signs off on it. And sometimes that's not until a few days before, but they obviously put it out there well in advance. I'm curious, do you know why they did it that way this year?
I'm not sure. I mean, maybe the computers are involved a little bit more. I'm going to cop to something here where several years ago, probably about 10 years ago, I had a great source that worked in the NFL that said, hey, you'll look smart if you put this out as the date that we're going to release the schedule. And I published it, and it was dead wrong. I was like, what happened? And just like North told you, like the schedule wasn't ready. They went through and they noticed like somebody had 4 road games in a row, and they had to, you can't just like mix that up. There's a whole matrix that's there, and they do it. They still do it. They rely on computers, of course, and AI and all that stuff, but they still do a lot of it by hand, and it just wasn't ready. So the idea that they announced a date during the draft, I found to be particularly surprising, and I'm curious to see if they are able to hit it, or if there's going to be some sort of a jumble coming up in the run up to it.
I was thinking that they probably figured out there's some benefit to really pre-selling it, especially during the draft.
Yeah, of course. I mean, from sponsorships to advertising to just getting the fans involved. I mean, if you look at those numbers for the draft and the numbers for the schedule release, the NBA playoffs are great, and they're fun, and they have big stars and big brands, and people still watch the draft in droves over the NBA.
Yeah. All right. So what do you I asked this guy, Mike North, I said, I guess the Washington conversation in schedule making this year is different than it's been. He said completely different. So have you thought about, the prime spots for Washington, international games, holiday games at all?
I'm not sure about holiday games. I know that there's a max number of games. I think it's 6, or is it 8?
Six for prime time, not counting flex.
For prime. And the thing that Washington has on its side is it's coming off a great year. Jaden Daniels appears to be a star, and the NFL likes that. This is a burgeoning franchise with a dormant fan base that the NFL really likes. Again, you've seen Roger Goodell in town with this team's owner the past 2 weeks. I would be shocked if they didn't max out in terms of primetime appearances.
Do you have any thoughts on who Philly opens up with on the Thursday night, September 4th or 5th or whatever it is for the first game of the year?
Who are they?
Three NFC East teams, right? Detroit, Giants, Skins, and Cowboys, and then they've got Detroit, Chicago, Denver, the Raiders, and the Rams.
for Chicago. Detroit's always up there. I wouldn't be surprised if they did an NFC East there. That's the one area. Because I used to do this all the time, where I would predict the Thanksgiving games, and I was always pretty good on that. But there's been a thought where they don't like to put the best rivalry games on Thanksgiving anymore because people are going to watch no matter what. And even if you put a big game in, they want to make sure that they lead on that for opening Thursday night with a big game. And so that to me would suggest that you would get a Philly, possibly a Philly Commanders game to open the season. Although I haven't heard anything in terms of that. But I would think like an NFC East foe would make a lot of sense because they do like to start the schedule with the interdivision matchups and then end the schedule with the interdivision matchups. So that would make a lot of sense there. But I don't have any inside knowledge on that.
Get ready, people. There are going to be some late nights next year. That's for sure.
We're talking bleary eyes on Tuesday and some Monday mornings.
Tuesdays, Fridays, and Mondays. Yeah.
Fridays.
We're talking
Adam in.
Talking to John Orand. So you talked about something on your recent podcast. You said was Goodell's Oval Office visit yesterday a peacekeeping mission for the league. What is it specifically that they're trying to keep peace with when it comes to this administration?
As we're talking right now, there are representatives from the NBA, the NHL, and baseball that are sitting in front of the Senate Commerce Committee, which is chaired by Ted Cruz. And he asked Roger Goodell or somebody from the NFL to appear on this hearing as well. And the NFL said, no, we're not doing it. And one of the things that Ted Cruz does on not just Ted Cruz, but the Senate Commerce Committee does is the idea of the antitrust exemption that the NFL has is always a lever that politicians try to use to extract something out of the league, or even just threatening to take it away. And we know the long history that Donald Trump has with the NFL, from trying to even get in the 80s when he was with the USFL, and then the Anthem Gate and Colin Kaepernick and everything having to do with that. The idea that Roger Goodell was in the Oval Office with Donald Trump just after saying no to Ted Cruz is, nobody knows. It's impossible to predict what will happen. But that was a pretty big statement to me of that he's doing what is necessary to maintain this antitrust exemption that the NFL has.
What is the NFL doing to put that antitrust exemption at risk?
One of the things that they're doing. So one of the things that the Commerce Committee is up in arms about is the idea that if you want to watch NFL games on Christmas Day, you have to buy Netflix. You have to have a Netflix account. And if you want to see the opening Friday night game from Brazil, you're going to have maybe a YouTube account, YouTube or something along those lines. If you want to watch the Thursday night games, you have to have Amazon. And they said the point of the antitrust exemption is that this should be available to the most people. Like you're making people buy all these different streaming services, in addition to cable, for goodness sakes. And it's great for the league. The league's making a ton of money. It's not very good for the fans, and so that's why the antitrust exemption might be up. I don't think it is up, by the way. I don't think there's a prayer that they're going to take it away in the near future. But again, as sort of with this administration and if the NFL does something that runs afoul of the administration, like that could easily happen.
Well, I'm just curious, and maybe you don't have the answer to this, but what does the NFL business model look like without it?
Oh, that's going to be totally fascinating. So let's take the broadcasting for one. Right now, the NFL has it controls all the team's media rights, and so it's able to create these packages and say Fox, here are your games, and CBS, here are your games, et cetera, et cetera. If the antitrust exemption goes away, all of a sudden the teams are able to say, like the Cowboys can say, we're going to sell the rights to our home games, and there's going to be a bidding war for those rights, and the Commanders will be able to sell the rights to their home games. What potential the worst case scenario is the Jaguars are going to sell the rights to their home games, and I joked in my newsletter that Cheddar would be the one to pick up the Jaguar rights. After Fox and Netflix and everybody is falling over themselves to get the Cowboys rights, and you would end up with the haves and the have-nots in a big way, even worse than we see right now in Major League Baseball.
Got it. Talking to John Orand. All right. Last one, just out of curiosity. How are the NBA and NHL playoffs doing so far?
In terms of television, the NBA is doing great. This is a really important postseason for the NBA, in my opinion, just because LeBron's getting old and Steph Curry's getting old, and like Jimmy Butler, and this is a chance for Cleveland and OKC and Minnesota and these teams that have these really good young stars to start to become a better known to the sporting public. And so far, what we've seen, and a lot of this is driven because LeBron James and the Lakers have been in, and Steph Curry and the Warriors. The ratings are up like a double digits right now in terms of the NBA. The NHL is not doing as well. It's not doing well at all, actually, in terms of viewership. But a lot of that you can lay at the feet of the fact that there are a lot of Canadian teams that are still playing, and they don't rate well in the States. It's a good news, bad news scenario for the NHL. I think the NHL is doing fine. I think the business behind the NHL is as good as it's been in years. But television ratings for these playoffs are not doing well in the U.S.
Don't you think if we get Oklahoma City, Cleveland, that is a disaster for the NBA?
No, I don't think it's a disaster. Do I think it's going to get potentially the lowest finals ever in terms of viewership? Yes. But the NBA just signed 11-year deals, so they can afford to have a disaster now if they're able to seed these players so people know who they are. So I think we agree. Yeah, it'll be a disaster. Nobody will watch, but enough people will be watching that I think they'll be fine with that.
Yeah, to your point, like they've already been paid for the next 11 years or whatever it is. They're in good shape.
12 years. It's 11 years after
12.
This. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my God. So getting Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and getting some of the, an Anthony Edwards, getting one of them into the finals and starting to let people know who these guys are, and they're the next, LeBron and Steph of the league. Yeah. At the same time, wouldn't shock me if we end up with Jokic or Steph in the finals. We'll see.
You can't kill them. You can't kill them.
Certainly, no, especially Steph. Thanks for doing this. Always enjoy it. Hope you're well.
All right. 1 to 10. 10 means you're totally optimistic. Buzz Williams. I'm at a 10 right now.
Yeah, I mean, look what he's done. There are two things that strike me so far. Number one is his former players love him. You can't find anybody that's worked with him or played for him that doesn't swear by him. Number two is it's a transfer portal class that right now is ranked in the top 12. And then he just signed a 5-star player as a freshman the other day. So next year, which was written off by every Maryland fan after, the debacle to end the season, may be a competitive season. Anyway, you just don't know. Every year's a new roster, so we'll see what happens. Do you think that is
12 new players? Yeah,
12 new players. But this year's team was essentially all new players, with the exception of Reese. Do you think that did it hurt the tournament this year? Is it hurting college sports that we have basically no consistency with players and teams year to year, or do we just adapt?
I think it is starting to hurt a little bit, and I think again, I mentioned this with the ABC telecast of the NFL draft. People like you and me are going to learn these 12 new players. We're going to go to the games and we're going to support them, and it's going to be fun. What about not the people that aren't hardcore but are kind of fans? Like you need to go on the kind of run that Maryland went on for them to buy into it. And so I think that's where it's going to get harder and harder, is to get the mid-casual fans to start to buy into some of these teams, because they don't know any of these players.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we've talked about this many times before, but college basketball is essentially, for sports fans, become a 1-month sport, period. And
yeah,
they didn't know in recent years, even if players were consistent year to year with teams, they didn't. They know the uniforms and the brands that are the teams and the uniforms in the sport, and sometimes the coaches more so than the players. Anyway, that's really been the case for a long time. Anyway, don't you think?
Yeah, but now you're seeing the coaches like leaving. So you're having to get because Coach K isn't around anymore, and Jay Wright's not around anymore, and Larinaga isn't around anymore, and so all of a sudden, like they don't like how basketball is progressing. I think they're in the process of solving it. I'm curious to see how that works, but it's not going to happen for the next season or two.
All right, thank you. Talk to you soon. Appreciate it, John.
Anytime. See you. Bye.
John Orand, everybody, at OURAND_puck. John's the best on sports business, sports media, etc. All right. I went and actually graded Washington's draft. Somebody basically asked me to do it to settle a bet. So I'll give you my Washington draft grade a week after the draft ended next. This from Martin. Martin wrote me last week. He said, Kevin, so you don't want to grade the draft. I have a bet with a friend of mine that you really liked their draft. So let's play a hypothetical game. I give you $1,000 to give me an honest grade, and you take the money and give the grade. Please play along. So Martin's got a friend he's got a bet with that I really like the draft. I'm not going to take your money, Martin. It's hypothetical anyway. Look, I'm fine with giving a grade on the draft. It's just such an exercise that every year when you see these people, and everybody's got a grade, you just have to understand that they have no idea. It's easy to go back and audit the draft choices per team and to come to, the answer, which is they're wrong essentially 2/3 of the time. The grading on the drafts is probably wrong 2/3 of the time as well. It's hard to grade a draft when you haven't seen any of these players play it down yet. Again, I've said this many times. If your grade is simply based on where they drafted him and if they got good value for the pick, meaning that guy was supposed to be picked a lot earlier and they got him a lot later, good value pick, or bad value pick, that guy was supposed to go much later, they picked him much earlier. There's not even really in a draft like the one just completed a major consensus on the, round, equaling the player in terms of what's projected after the first maybe 7 or 8 picks. There was such a feeling among the draft experts, and even teams said this, that, players 5 through 55 were basically interchangeable. So anyway, I went back and I did this for you, Martin. So I'm going to do it. And I did it player by player with this understood. Like overall, I love that they invested in Jaden Daniels with a pick in the first round that improves their offensive line, theoretically. Investing in the trenches with a player like Connor Lee Jr., investing in a corner in which corners are super important to defensive performance in today's game. So that to me was kind of a positive overall that you can take away from what they did. And I also love that I believe that this is true. I love that they're drafting the best player available in the spot in which their pick comes up, because I think they're in position to do that. They're good enough, but they're not great yet. They have a lot of needs. So it's not like they were a player or two away from being, hey, this team's the Super Bowl favorite. If they get the best pass rusher in the draft, or if they get the best corner in the draft, or if they sign the best running back in the draft. Not true. They had needs at almost every position other than quarterback. So they I think did what they did last year and what they said they would do this year, which I believe in, which is best player available. What I didn't love about this draft is, because the draft is so inexact, because there's much more wrong that gets picked than right, because they did have, significant needs, it would have been great had they traded back and accumulated more picks and gotten more swings than just 5. If you consider 35% to be an average hit rate on a draft, you'd rather that 35% be on 10 players than 5 players, because you're going to end up with more contributors. Now, they weren't going to get up to 10 picks, but they did have an opportunity late in the first round to trade back, at least according to Adam Peters. And I bet they had other opportunities to trade back as well. So getting just 5 picks, we knew that going in, we were hoping that they would end up with more, and not getting one of the, I think, significant needs that they have. But what do I know? Because they may feel totally differently about the players that are currently in-house. They may feel like, we're okay with Dorrance Armstrong and with Dietrich Wise and with Javon Kinlaw and with Duran playing, in the second year of this system, et cetera, to have a really good pass rush and a really good defense. But they didn't get, a potential major impact defensive player on the defensive line, specifically a defensive edge, defensive end / edge. So with that in mind, here are my thoughts on the players, starting with Connerly Jr. Again, love that they're investing in protecting their number one asset, which is Jaden Daniels. I like that they invested in the trenches. I like the athleticism of the player. I like that Cliff Kingsbury wanted him so much. I like that they also filled a need. Yeah, it was very clear with the trade for Laramie Tunsil that they didn't view Brandon Coleman as a starting left tackle. And it's pretty clear, given that he was the best player on the board and that they, if you take them for their word, they were hoping he would slide to them after a while, that they didn't view Brandon Coleman as a starting right tackle. So investing in the trenches, in the division they're in the situation they're in, trying to compete with Philadelphia, which is very strong on their defensive front, very strong defensively overall. The athleticism of this potential player, the fact that they picked him before all of the highly rated offensive linemen were gone. The Simmons went to Kansas City at the end. By the way, I did see that video of Howie Roseman looking to trade up in that first round with Washington. If you haven't seen that video, do you have that sound? I'm curious. I didn't ask you before the show, Max.
I can get it in a matter of like 30 seconds.
Yeah, if you can get it, that'd be great for those that haven't heard it. Basically, Howie Roseman recorded in the draft room in Philadelphia, making a call, by the way, for the second straight year to Washington. There was a trade made in the second round last year between Washington and Philadelphia. This year, he was looking to trade up to 29. He wanted Jihad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama. This was his call to Adam Peters.
Hey, buddy, how we doing? Yeah, it's a tradition. I feel like you should keep it keeping trades. Any interest in a small move out? So there's an in-division tax. You really didn't want to do a trade with me.
With the 29th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Washington Commanders select Josh Connerly Jr.
Here we go.
Tackle, Oregon.
Okay.
It's a great pick.
That last comment from Howie Roseman, great pick. I guess it's nice to hear that from Howie Roseman. Tried to trade up, which would have been from 32 to 29. Now, Philadelphia did make a trade with Kansas City to move up one spot after this conversation with Washington. Washington didn't want to trade back. Now, Philly wanted Jihad Campbell. That's the player they wanted. And Washington, I guarantee you, felt like trading back to 32, which is what would have happened in that spot to pick up maybe a third rounder for the move, that they would have lost Connerly Jr. maybe to Kansas City, who was scheduled to pick at 31 before the trade with Philadelphia. I don't think they wanted to risk it. I think they really legitimately wanted Josh Connerly Jr. and knew that if they traded back even just from 29 to 32 in that spot, that there was a chance that they would lose him. So there's just a lot there, that confirms that Adam Peters wasn't, BSing us when he said we had opportunities, plural, he said, to move back and not that far. I thought maybe Kansas City was the team moving up to 29. Maybe they were too, but now we know Philadelphia was interested in trading up to 29. Already since Adam Peters took over, there have been a couple of trades with Philadelphia. Draft day trade last year where Washington picked up 2 seconds, but gave up a second, which became Cooper DeJean for Philadelphia. Washington, it ended up becoming San Ristil and Ben Sinnott in the second round, right? I think that's what it was. And then obviously Washington traded Jahan Dotson to Philly as well during training camp. But I think Washington didn't trade back because they were fearful of losing Connerly Jr. So anyway, back to the grading of the draft. I like that Connerly Jr. was picked by Washington. I think I like the player. I admit, offensive line, very tough for most fans to really and truly evaluate. Cooley loved Connerly Jr., said super athletic. Just the athleticism alone against some of the best defensive players, including guys like Abdul Carter that he faced in college, meant that without question, he looked the part of a first-round pick. I give the Connerly pick an A. Trey Amos. Look, they picked a guy at the end of the second round that was projected by many to go in the first round, worst case, early second round. So based on that, the value looks good. I like the player. I talked about this player before the draft. I liked a few of the other corners as well, and maybe a little bit more, but I trust them on the fit. Cornerbacks, like offensive linemen, are hard for us to analyze because so much of it is fit and scheme dependent. But I'll give that pick an A. So there you go. The first two picks, A. Jalen Lane. I didn't know much about Lane, but I'm impressed. He's athletic. He's got great speed. He's a true vertical threat, especially with a quarterback that can throw the football. He's also a weapon, because of all of the reverses and jet sweeps and screens at the line of scrimmage that he ran at Virginia Tech. He's also a punt returner. So I think the value was fine. I liked a few receivers a lot more, but they were all gone by the time Washington got to their fourth round pick. Washington didn't have a third rounder. I like the Jalen Lane pick. I give it a B. Kane Medrano was the player that after watching after the draft, I really loved the player as much as a fan can love a player's highlight reel for the most part. The value in the sixth round, based on kind of a back of the envelope consensus before the draft, the value was fine. I personally don't know what he is. He might be a safety. He actually has the build of more of a safety, but he played a lot of linebacker. I love the athleticism. I love the relative athletic scores of this draft. That should have been something I also mentioned as kind of an overview, big takeaway. In that I do like that they certainly have this idea that they want more athleticism, more team speed, and I thought team speed was something they needed to improve here in the offseason anyway. But I loved watching Kane Medrano's anticipation, feel, and talent. He did have some issues with tackling at times and missed tackles, sometimes overplaying the anticipation, being there, but maybe a bit too early. But I thought that this player, based on where they got him and his athleticism and his feel for the game, was B plus A minus. So far, I like all the players. And then lastly, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. There's something about this pick that I bet you guys didn't know. I'll share that with you when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app.
All right, yesterday, too much rain. The Nats had their game postponed yesterday, and they will re-rack and take on the Cleveland Guardians twice in a doubleheader right here on the Team 980 pregame with Charlie and Dave. Starts at 3:05. Two thrilling NBA finishes last night. The Knicks rally from a 20-point deficit to beat the Boston Celtics in overtime 108-105. And the Nuggets fight back and steal a win off the Oklahoma City Thunder. Jokic put up 42 points and 22 rebounds. Clemson and Notre Dame football programs have announced a home-and-home series set to begin in 2027. The two college football titans will face off through 2038, and the series will work independently of the ACC structure and does not count towards one of Notre Dame's 5 ACC games. The Washington Capitals will take on the Carolina Hurricanes after nearly a week off. Pregame at 6:45 on 106.7 The Fan. Logan Thompson expected to get the start. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980 and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
So Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, their 7th-round selection from Arizona, a player who only played one game at Arizona. You have to go back to the 2023 Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, New Mexico stuff to really get a feel for the player. But before I tell you just thoughts on the player and give it a grade, I went back last week and just looked at all of the 7th-round running backs over the last 10 years of the NFL draft, not including, of course, the draft just finished. 33 running backs have been taken in the 7th round over the last 10 years of the NFL draft. And just one out of 33 has had an impact. Isaiah Pacheco, 7th round, Rutgers to KC in 2022. That's it. That's the list. 7th round running backs just don't really produce much. It is a long shot to land on a significant contributing running back in the 7th round. Yes, I do know that this draft in particular was a very deep running back draft. And maybe the chances are greater because the evaluation of running backs in this draft was that there were a lot of them, and a lot of them were very much the same. And so teams were going to wait until the final day of the draft to start taking running backs. But I thought that was interesting. Now, there are a couple of undrafted free agents. Rico Dowdle was an undrafted free agent in the league right now. He's making, a contribution. He's a pretty good back, actually. In our history, Alfred Morris was a 6th round pick. But basically, 7th round running backs for the most part, just like 7th round anything. It's a long shot. It just typically doesn't happen. I'm reminded of when, I mentioned about the just looking at, probability-based past history with Sam Howell being picked in the 5th round. It was a needle in a haystack that he was going to end up being a guy that was drafted at that point, passed over by so many teams with needs in a draft that didn't have any quarterbacks, that somehow he was going to end up being a find. Didn't discount or eliminate it discounted it, didn't eliminate the chance that it could be, a find, like the find of the century, like, the Kurt Warner undrafted, Arena League story. But just telling you, 1 out of 33 in the last 10 years, 7th round running backs, Isaiah Pacheco. He's the best of the lot, and it's not even close. And he's far from a great back. I love Pacheco, though. He runs so hard. He's good. He's a good back. He's not an elite back, but he's a really good back. But he's not in the upper tier of backs. Now, on Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, didn't know anything about him until they picked him. I would have been thrilled had they figured out a way to get a few other guys, maybe a trade up into the early part of the 7th round to take the guy that I talked about all spring and even going back to college football seasons the last 2 years, Damian Martinez, who, by the way, on multiple lists of the biggest steals in the draft, he was listed on almost every one of them, being taken early in the 7th round by Seattle. I love Taj Brooks and Devin Neal. They both went in the 6th rounds, in the 6th round. But I think Merritt looks good on tape. The New Mexico stuff looks good. Maybe he's the guy after Genty that turns into the star. Who knows? But he's quick. He's fast. He's, got good cutting ability, decent vision. We'll see. I mean, to me, it's a B-, C+ pick. Really hard to know. But overall, on the 5 picks, I gave Connerly Jr. an A. I gave Amos an A. I gave Lane a B. I gave Medrano B+, A-, and I gave Krosky-Merritt B-, C+. It probably averages out to like an A-, B+ draft. So to Martin, who asked me to do this to settle a bet with a friend, I think I just won you money. Wouldn't you consider an A-, B+ draft, Max, to be a good evaluation of the draft?
Yeah, A-, B+. That's pretty much where I've seen. I mean, that's where it lands for me. That's where I've seen it land for a bunch of people around here. And that's what I've been hearing throughout the national media. So I think you got it right.
Well, I didn't get it right.
Well, I mean, nobody can get it
what
right.
I'm giving out.
You're on par.
We may have gotten it right. We may have gotten it right.
Let's hope so.
But we'll know in the year 2028. We'll know 2 years before the new stadium opens,
Man.
and a year after Washington hosted the draft. Speaking of Washington hosting the draft, some of my thoughts on this, and I want some of yours at 301-230-0980. Are you excited that Washington got the draft? Will you attend in 2027 the draft? Phone lines are open, 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, Team 980, the team980.com. By the way, if you've never seen pro rugby live, this is your chance to change that. Tuesday night, May 13th at 6 p.m., Old Glory, D.C. takes on NOLA Gold at George Mason University Stadium. Big hits, fast breaks, 80 minutes of nonstop action, and tickets are just $15. It's Old Glory's biggest military salute ever. Free tickets at the gate for service members with a valid ID. And author Martin Pegler will be signing Brotherhood when West Point Rugby went to war. Get your tickets now at oldglorydc.com, and let's scrum together. This from Aiden. Aiden writes, sounds like you're unimpressed that the draft is coming to D.C., Kevin. This might end up being the most attended sports thing ever. Not sure why you, of all people, aren't celebrating more than anybody else. Well, Aiden, I am impressed. I'm excited about it. I haven't had a chance to celebrate it yet because I was out yesterday. So impressed, excited. Yeah, why not? Now, if you're sensing from me that I'm not in like this current state of, euphoria, yeah, because honestly, I'm much more into the upcoming season and what they can do next year as a team that just won 12 regular season games and 2 playoff games. I'm much more into the team and the football part of the organization right now, which is really nice to be after all of these years of focusing on everything but football. It doesn't minimize the fact that when it gets here in 2027, I won't be into it. It'll be great for, the show. It'll be great for the station. It'll be great for the city that I live in. It'll be all of those things. It'll be wild, actually. I mean, just the thought, and I've seen some of the pictures of how it'll be set up. It'll be beautiful. And, it's spring, now the cherry blossoms are gone. They're usually down by then. But it'll be a phenomenal event. Am I going to go all 3 days? I promise you I will not do that. I'm sure I'll be working it, assuming I'm still in the business in 2 years. But I'm sure I'll be working it and be thrilled to be down there. It'll be fun to be a part of a draft. I'm assuming it ain't going to be easy to get to where we have to get to and then get out of there when we have to get out of there. But no, I get what you're saying, Aiden. I wasn't on yesterday when the news broke. We've talked about this before. It would be really cool to get a draft, but it's like the stadium news and the draft news is like down the road. It's like we can focus, on multiple things at the same time. But for me, like the thing I'm most excited about right now when it comes to the team, I'm really excited to see the schedule that they play and how it sets up for them. Rest days, primetime spots, where are the spots that they're going to play some of these games that they've got a schedule, man, at least right now, the way it looks. I mean, the teams that they're going to have on their schedule are exceptional. So I'm excited about that. And then we'll, now that the draft news is there and the stadium news, will obviously follow the stadium vote for the city council. But yeah, like I guess for me, it's like those things are so far down the road. And for the first time, we haven't had to wonder about whether or not the team that we all root for and follow is going to have a chance. Like we're having conversations after they were in the NFC Championship game. It's still kind of hard to fathom and believe is true after going 4-13 and getting their ass kicked week in and week out with just a dreadful football team, which was dreadfully coached there at the end by Ron Rivera and staff, who clearly wanted out. They were ready to get the hell out of Dodge. They didn't want to be a part of this thing. They knew they weren't going to be. It was a lame duck season. And then to have what unfolded last year, I mean, the Cincinnati game being kind of the first moment of, oh my God, he might really be good. Having that game in Baltimore that they lost, but it was competitive. The Hail Mary game against Chicago, the Pittsburgh game that they lost was such an exciting game. I still think Ertz had the first down. Playing the Eagles in a massive division game in late November on Thursday Night Football. The Eagles in December, the Falcons on a Sunday night in a game to clinch a playoff berth. And then to be able to go to Tampa and have that playoff win, the first one that they had since that 2005 season, which, included a playoff win on the road in Tampa. I mean, they had gone nearly 20 years without a playoff win. And then the Detroit game, I mean, seriously, was there a better night in the season than that night? Putting up 45 and just blitzing the top seeded Detroit Lions in the NFC, with Jaden throwing for 300 and rushing for another 50 or 60. I mean, they were unstoppable that night. Yeah, I'm much more into, what is coming right around the corner, which is, we're 4 months away from opening week. We're 3 months away from like the first preseason game in training camp. I'm excited to actually be able to talk about a team that for the first time, we don't have to stretch it to come up with all of the scenarios in which they might go 9-8. This looks like a team that is going to win double-digit games for a second straight season. Things happen. It's the NFL. Things change. Injuries are obviously the biggest kind of predictor of these things. 301-230-0980. The draft news, broke on Sunday night. I was out yesterday, but I want to give you a chance to weigh in at 301-230-0980. What are your thoughts? Are you excited? Will you attend? What are you hoping for in 2027? Or do you feel like I do, which is I'm excited, but I'll be much more excited when we, get there. And I hope that how great would it be if the draft in 2027 comes shortly after a Jaden Daniels third season, which ends in a Lombardi trophy as the defending champions? Has the draft been held in a city where the defending champions reside? I'm guessing not. Because have we had it in Kansas City? Philly, yes, but not after their Super Bowl season. All right, 301-230-0980. Let's go to Stephen in Upper Marlboro. Stephen, go ahead. Stephen. Hello, Stephen. Let's go to Samaj. Samaj, go ahead. Do we not have callers, Max?
We do. It's the phone's giving me a lot more trouble than I'm used to.
Okay.
All right.
I see the callers on hold. If you can't get them
I'm hitting
up,
the button, and I am losing my mind. This is just awful radio.
This is what Doc would refer to as JV. We're in the JV outfit.
Yeah, that was a JV move. Samaj, you got me?
Yes, I'm right here, buddy.
Samaj, go ahead, man.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing, Coach? What's good, man? It's been a little bit since I checked in with you. And as usual, Coach, you and I are, we're almost simpatico as far as our thoughts. I'm with you. I'm like, all right, let me look at the season. Let me see how things lay out. Where am I going to be concerned about injuries because of the Thursday games, which I despise? But it is what it is. And I'm really curious into that realm. But I have another question for you, Kev, and I'd like for you to give me some kickback on that. Be it that the draft's in the rearview mirror, the stadium looks firm as far as coming back to the district and RFK, minus some few bureaucratic hurdles that still yet to come. My thing is, Kev, as I've talked to you about several times, and I've kind of moved on beyond the name, because like I told you last year when the Harris group, with Jay Harris basically embraced the Commanders, I knew we were stuck with that. And in addition to getting J5 and the winning that was taking place, and then went on to take us all the way to the NFC title game. So I'm good. I've at least moved on to calling them the C's. But you mentioned something a while back, and the last time we talked about anything relative to the name and brand. You spoke to the logo, and I double checked on that, and you said, and it is true, that the Harris Group still owns the trademark for the logo. So, all things aside with the name, can we still? Have you heard anything? Is anything being said
here's the
relative
thing.
to?
Okay, Samaj, you know how I feel. All right, I mean, I would would kill to get the old name back. I would kill to get the old uniforms back, the old logo back, the whole kit and caboodle. All right. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I mean, a lot of people are hoping our current president somehow affects that change. Look, I would bet you that most of the ownership would prefer to go that route too, but I don't think the league's going to do it. Now, with respect to the logo would have to be something that would work with the name. And right now, I don't know that the logo does work with the name. But in terms of the logo, there was never anything, and there's no pushback even from the furthest of left, leaning thought about the logo. The logo was not considered to be a racist logo. It was not insensitive. But I just don't see that being a part of it. Now, I do think, and I've talked about this for, coming up on 9-10 months, because I had heard something back in the early portion of the season, that I do think that something will happen with the uniforms, that the uniforms, perhaps not this year, maybe an alt uniform this year looks like the old uniform, but I do think down the road something will happen with the uniforms where they will try to give the look and feel of what the team used to be. So there is hope for that. But as of now, our owner told us that inside the building, they've adapted to Commanders. Didn't say anything about outside the building because he knew that would look foolish in saying that. But inside the building, they've adapted to adapted to the Commanders, and 14 wins, with 2 of those being playoff road wins, gave them the path to least resistance on this for right now. So that's what I would say to it. Yeah.
I agree 100%. And but I thought you had mentioned that there was a possibility from a marketing standpoint for a particular game, a particular week, like maybe the Cowboy matchup.
Yeah, maybe
they could
that would be nice.
Out the logo. Now my thing is though, I did see a rendition of the W, which I do like, with the feather on it, which I thought was cool. And I've also I'm curious as to if the previous gentleman, the Native American that was on the logo, if I'm not mistaken, he was a chief. I'm getting ready to really stretch this. But if he was a chief, that's synonymous with commander. Thank you for taking my call, buddy. Have a blessed one.
Appreciate it. Yep. Blackie Wetzel was the creator of that logo. God, man, I'll tell you seriously, the name conversation. Sorry for those of you that constantly push me to just do nothing but talk about the name. It's actually now like I'm focused on following a team that's good, and I don't have, and I never will have. This is just the God's honest truth. I will never, unless they went back to everything, the name, the uniforms. It's the way I feel. I can't imagine ever feeling the same way about this team that I used to feel. Okay, this is what they call, I've told you this many times, branding detached, emotional detachment. Okay, you ask any major brand in any kind of consumer goods product, and that's the fear of changing anything significant with a brand. This is a conversation we've been having for 15 years, when all of you and many of you said, just don't worry, if they change it, it'll be a boon economically. And no, it hasn't been. Okay, now what helped last year is winning. Winning helped, and what really helped, and this was a unique situation, is Snyder selling the team. So there is more passion back than there used to be, because it had really nearly died out. But it's not the same. Like I've said a million times, for a significant percentage of the fan base, even if they're into the team right now and excited that the team's doing well, it feels different. It just does, because on February 2nd, 2022, when everything changed, it felt like an expansion team arrived in town, and that's what it's felt like. Now, the expansion team is good. They got a great quarterback. They've got new ownership. They're going to have a new stadium. They're going to host the draft, but it doesn't mean that the psychological attachment is the same, because it's not, and I understand that. But at the same time, that old name, it ain't coming back. I mean, I'd love to be shocked with some sort of, executive branch decision on it, that, the league decides to kowtow to. But I don't see that happening. And I've already admitted many times over, making a change to something else is not an easy process. It's just not easy. There's just too many. There's no easy answer if it's not Redskins. And that's not an easy answer for the league. Be an easy answer for most of the fans and for us, but it's not an easy answer for the league. And outside of that, there's no easy answer. I'd love Washington football team, and we just call them the Skins, call them Washington, old uniforms with the W or the logo, prefer the logo. But it doesn't seem like that's going to happen either. And I've said this a million times. I'm not blaming Josh Harris on this, or Mark Ein, or Mitch Rales, or Magic Johnson, because there's no easy answer. And it's probably a costly answer to end up with a still polarized fan base on whatever that new thing would be. Now, I've made the argument before that doing nothing is worse than doing something, but that's not necessarily where they are. And again, many of their future revenues are much younger than I am and have much greater, lifetime revenue potential than I do, and many of you who are listening do. All right. We're having an issue with the phones. Well, we'll try to get it figured out. But when we come back, John Walton will join us. John, of course, is the play-by-play voice for Caps Radio, Caps and Canes tonight in game 1 of their best of 7 second-round series. I have no idea why we had to wait this long for this series to start. It certainly seemed like it could have started sooner than Tuesday night, but it is starting tonight, and we'll see what happens. I do want you to consider, if you've been considering new windows, consider Window Nation. May is officially here, so are rising temperatures. Before you know it, you'll be wondering what else you can do to keep cool during the dog days of summer. Beat the heat and keep the AC in your home with Window Nation's energy-efficient vinyl windows. During their semi-annual sale, you'll get 60% off and a free entry door when you purchase a house full of windows. Plus, no money down, no interest, and no monthly payments until the year 2027. That's a whole lot of savings and a super smart investment, especially when prices are rising. So how exactly do they keep prices affordable? Window Nation works directly with the top window manufacturers in the country, which means all of their windows are assembled right here in the US of A. Plus, their windows come with a lifetime warranty, so you'll keep saving long into the future. Window Nation's semi-annual sale ends soon, so don't miss your chance to get 60% off and a free entry door when you purchase a house full of windows. Plus, pay nothing until the year 2027. Schedule your estimate right now at 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. It's a free estimate. Mention my name. They'll take good care of you. 866-90-NATION or windownation.com.
Puck coming near side. And away from Mangiapane, second unit here, Ovechkin, he scores! Alex Ovechkin has 894, and the bench empties here at Capital One Arena. Ovechkin has reached the summit. He needs one more to go one step beyond. He has tied Wayne Gretzky for the most all time in NHL history.
Why did we come back with the game with the tying goal? Why not the
tweet
record
said
breaker?
The tweet said 895, and I spent like 5 minutes scrolling through the files looking
John's
for it.
Call of 895. 894 was pretty good. John
They're all
Walton's
good.
with us right now with the Caps and Carolina game 1 tonight at Capital One Arena at John Walton PXP play-by-play on X on Twitter. I think I asked Joe B this on both of those goals. Did you prepare for those two moments as a play-by-play announcer? Did you know what you wanted to say? Did you have it scripted? Do we have John? I can't hear John.
Hello?
I got you now, John. Did you hear my question?
I did. I heard the whole thing. I'm not a scripted guy, but I will say, with 894, with the one that was there just now, there wasn't anything there. I would be lying if I said it. I didn't give at least some consideration on 895 because it is this moment, what it's going to be. And there's so much in our sport that you don't know. Like when Kuznetsov scores against the Penguins in overtime, none of that is scripted, thought of. Even the end of winning in Vegas in Game 5, you don't know they're coming back from a goal in the third period. It could have been a blowout. You could have been pontificating for 2 hours. I mean, there's a lot of different ways a game can go. So I've never been a guy to script anything. I will say for 895, I had thought a little bit. One of my dad's favorite players was Hank Aaron, and there was a little bit of, I think I never really quite know how it's going to come out until it actually happens, but I had at least kind of considered that morning, when he hit 715, it was something that was similar to that. And that was by design. And that was for two reasons. One was for my dad, and the other was for my broadcasting hero, who I was fortunate enough to work with many, many years ago when I worked for the Reds in Marty Brenneman. And Marty's first day on the job, can you imagine this? Imagine what Joe or myself or either like Chris King with the Islanders or Kenny Albert, we all got to call it. Can you imagine your first day on the job? And for Marty Brenneman, his first day as voice of the Reds was opening day in 1974, and Hank Aaron hit 714 that day.
Wow.
An incredible, incredible thing. So it was a little bit of an homage to both of those guys that have meant so much to me, both personally and professionally. So I do confess there was a little bit of that in there. My dad has Alzheimer's now and, doesn't remember a lot. And I wanted it to kind of be a little bit of a throwback to something that I know meant a lot to him. So usually the answer to that is absolutely not. But in that one case, there was a little bit in there that I had kind of been thinking about that day I wanted to do.
Well, knowing that it will live forever, how did you feel about your call of 895?
I really liked it. It's funny. You're never in a position. I always feel weird. There are things that you do is like, okay, yeah, I think we nailed that one. We move on. But the ultimate judge isn't me. The ultimate judge is, how it's received by the people who hear it. And I did hear from a lot of industry people and a lot of people that I know in this great game. And you usually feel like, okay, I think that one lived up to the hype, lived up to the moment.
No,
but
it was great.
Ultimately, I don't think we picked that. I think whether you're Joe or whether you're me, we serve up the best we know how, and we hope that it resonates correctly. And I think for both of us, I think we were both pretty happy with that.
It was great. I think you both nailed it. By the way, I just looked this up because I wasn't sure. 715 Hank Aaron in April of 74 was called actually two ways. It was called by NBC, which carried the game live, by the great Kurt Gowdy, who was the voice of the AFL on NBC during the 70s. He was the host of American Sportsman, which was this incredible show during the 70s and 80s. But it was also, John, called by Vin Scully, who was the Dodgers announcer, and they were playing the Dodgers when he hit 715.
Yeah,
legends.
I mean, so you right, so national and a third, Milo Hamilton, and
yes.
there was, so there were so many, and all three of the, I mean, just the best of the best of the best. Even, for the teams, because, I mean, like ours, right? You've got Joe and you've got me, but you had Kenny Albert, you had Chris King on Islanders radio.
Right.
So you had four different guys, but can you imagine having the star power and the magnitude of a call like that from the three guys you just said? I mean, it's staggering. Milo's was my favorite. That was the one that my dad liked the most, but you're right. I mean, having Vin Scully being able to call that it's not his team, right?
Right.
But that was kind of what Chris King with the Islanders got to do. And I talked with, when Chicago was in on Friday night, John Weideman does radio for the Hawks. And he said, listen, if it happens tonight, I said, I'm airing it out like it's the Stanley Cup. I said, I never thought I was going to be in a position to call this. He called 894. He got to call the one that you let off the segment with. But unfortunately, he didn't get that third one for the home folks. Otherwise, Johnny would have aired it out on Chicago radio, and that would have been fun, too.
By the way, you mentioning Marty Brenneman's name, I'm certainly familiar with Marty Brenneman, legendary Cincinnati guy. But, around here for a few years, not a long period of time, he did ACC basketball games.
He sure did. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was
North
excellent.
Carolina native, too. I mean, he's an East Coaster from birth. Yeah, yeah. But, big basketball guy. He did the Pacers for a while in the NBA for, select TV games for them. He did ABA in Norfolk. I mean, he was,
he did
very
Virginia
much
Squires games in Norfolk.
Sure did.
Wow.
That was, and he did his last baseball job was Tidewater in Norfolk. So there's a lot of Marty Brenneman folks down in Hampton Roads for sure, and then made the move to Cincinnati opening day 1974. And I worked with him. I was the PA announcer at Riverfront for 7 years, and I sat next to him, and I have never laughed harder in my life. He taught me so much about how I want my booth to be run. We never take anything too seriously. My first day on the job, honestly, with the Reds, John McSherry, you might remember, home plate umpire, dropped dead on the field on opening day. That was my first day on the job.
Oh my God.
So we were, it was crazy. And I always have kind of taken the attitude from there. It's like, look, if everybody lives to the end of the day, we're all right here. Like, there's nothing that happens in his job that is, it isn't fatal. So like let's move forward.
Exactly. That's not a bad attitude. I don't know how big of a basketball fan you are, but you mentioning Norfolk, and they had an arena down there called the Scope, and the Virginia Squires played there. And the Virginia Squires had on the same team Dr. J and George the Iceman Gervin. They played together on the same ABA team in Virginia. That would have been probably the mid-'70s, somewhere around there. Anyway, all right, let's talk hockey. So can you explain to me and to everybody listening why the odds makers don't like the Caps, in this series and overall in the East and overall to win the Cup?
It's a great question. And I have, old dog, new tricks. I try to pay attention to analytics and more modern numbers. We use more high danger chances. That's not a phrase that I have used in the broadcast until relatively recently in the last couple of years. There are things that can be quantified, and there are things that I just don't think can be. And the thing that I find very amusing about that in this series is that if you look at just straight analytics and Money Puck and all the websites, you think the Caps shouldn't even show up. I mean, they have 67% chance of Carolina winning it, which is ridiculous. I'm not saying Carolina isn't going to win the series. They certainly could. They're very good. But the Caps are very good. To me, this is very even or relatively even all the way down the middle from goal to defense to forwards. It's going to be a fantastic best of seven. I do find it interesting. And the guys who always know a little bit more and always seem to get it a lot more closer to the mark are the guys involving betting lines and things that involve money. It's funny. Those are much closer. They edge Carolina, but just a little bit.
You're preaching to the choir on those people knowing what they're talking about. But I just looked. I mean, Carolina's on average about a minus 180 favorite in this series.
Yeah, they are favored, and I think that part of it is that they're a good puck possession team. And when you look, the Caps beat them twice in the regular season. This is not. It's not like it was lopsided in the regular year when they met. And there's a lot of hostility when they were in Norfolk, and remember the game with all the penalty minutes in the third period. So there's a lot of spice. You've got two really good goalies here. The one thing that Carolina does really well is they generate momentum off of virtually nothing, and they will possess the puck a lot when things are going well. Now, when they've been in D.C., it has not been as pronounced because they don't have last change. The Capitals had trouble this season in Raleigh at times because when you don't have last change, and it should be mentioned here when people are looking at, what happened in the regular season, I don't know how much they weigh that. I have not had a dinner in Raleigh in 3 years. And the reason is that for each of the last two seasons, the Capitals have gone to Raleigh on a back-to-back. So they have played in D.C., and then they had to get on a plane, and they go there, and they don't have a morning skate. They haven't had a night in the hotel the night before, like a dinner, rest, morning skate, all the routine things that they would do. They haven't done it in 3 years. And I'm not saying that that's a huge thing, but it is a thing when you are continually getting a Carolina team, and every time Carolina at least had 2 days rest and the Caps had none. This series is going to be close. It is going to be long. I think it's at least 6. The Capitals need to win their home games for sure, because winning in Raleigh is very difficult. But that's what you play for home ice for. And I think as long as the Caps hold serve, I think they're going to be fine.
John, I had this conversation last week with, I think, Joe B. and Tarik and a few others. Getting through this first series after they hadn't won a series since 2018, I don't know if you felt the same way, but I sense that a lot of people that are really into the team and are close to the team felt like there was some pressure building to not, come up short of expectations, which would have meant, getting beat in the first round by Montreal. They had a great season, a memorable season because of Ovi. So I'm not suggesting that this is icing on the cake beyond the first round, but do you think they're playing with a little less pressure moving forward after, getting through, and not only getting through impressively in 5 games?
It's funny because if you look back over the last 15 years, and even in 2018, and we all remember Kuzi's goal against Pittsburgh, and we remember coming back from down 3-2 against Tampa Bay and winning in 5 against Vegas. But here's what sometimes maybe gets lost after 7 years. The Capitals trailed in every series. Yeah. They were down 0-2 to Columbus. They were down 2-1 to Pittsburgh at home. They were down 3-2 and looked like the dream was over against Tampa Bay, and they lost the first game against Vegas. They have remarkably this time, I talked to Tom Wilson about this a couple days ago. This remarkably was businesslike and really no drama. And the Caps historically have done nothing but drama. There was no drama here, and you were able to, and it was such a great feeling. And I even posted on X, Twitter, whatever we call it these days, the other night. I said, how great is it to be able to watch late round, first round games with your team already moved on? We haven't done that here ever. I mean, not my time. This is 14 years for me. Right. That's never happened. And it is, I think, a reflection of this coaching staff, these players, these vets, the new guys they've brought in, Logan Thompson for sure, to be able to say, look, we go out, we got a job to do. Montreal's a good team, and the Caps were a better team, but at no point did the Caps, were you worried? I was never worried in that series. Like, I don't know if it's going to go 5. I think they can finish this in 5, and they did finish it in 5. One bad game in game 3, but corrected so well on the road and was just great at line matching, even when he didn't have last change, Spencer Carberry in Montreal. So I think that's what you're going to see in this series against Carolina. I think that, they may win, they may lose, but I think this is the biggest test for this team. If they get by Carolina, I absolutely believe this team can go all the way. It's a matter of staying healthy and all of that. They match up. They did very well against Toronto this year. They did very well against Florida this year. And they did very well against Edmonton. I mean, when you look at the teams on the other side, they won in Vegas in the regular season for the first time ever this year. So even the teams on the other side, they have generally fared well. They beat Dallas in October, which was a lifetime ago, but they have wins against everybody. There's no team they can't beat, but this will probably be their biggest test.
Yeah, the way you said that, there was never an opportunity for that feeling of dread and tension to sort of combine in a game 6 or a game 7. Now, the downside of it being over so quickly is we've had to wait nearly a week for game 1, but it comes tonight. So tell me about the goalie matchup. Logan Thompson playing at a very high level. Tell me about just the matchup between the two goaltenders in this series.
It's intriguing because both missed a little bit of time. Logan less because he left game 3 in the third period. And we thought when we didn't see him on the off day and Charlie Lindgren gave the long interview and they rope-a-doped us into thinking that Charlie was going to play. And then lo and behold, guess who comes out the morning of game 4? Similar to that, Freddie Anderson got knocked out in game 4, didn't finish the series. He is expected to go tonight. Freddie Anderson is a little fragile in terms of when he gets hurt, it seems like he gets hurt a lot and he just can't stay healthy. Pyotr Kochetkov is our backup. He's very good too. But when Anderson's been on his game, and boy was he in the first round, gave New Jersey very little prior to injury. Kochetkov did enough to win and got him out of the first round in 5 games too. They've had the same rest. Anderson should be good to go. Thompson gets a week here. Alexei Protas gets a week. Alex Ovechkin, old man week off is not terrible at 39, right? So right. I think there is some use, even though there could be some rust, and certainly that's a bit of a consideration for tonight. But both teams have it, so I don't know that there could be a little bit of a feeling out. But generally, as much as these teams don't like each other, I think that's going to really the adrenaline's going to kick in. These guys are going to get after it right away, both teams. But for the goalies, Logan was one of the very best in the first round. Won all 4 games. Looked really good doing it, especially in the last 2. Didn't give them much at all, really. And I thought when he was called upon, and there were times, third period in game 1 and game 2, the Capitals ended up winning game 1 in overtime, game 2, but had to hang on to do it. This was a very close series, and he was definitely the difference. He'll need to be the difference again, no doubt. But against Freddie Anderson, I don't expect a lot of goals in this series. But we'll see. I think both these teams, you negate the star power and you look at the Brandon Duhaimes and those guys. Duhaime was huge and getting 3 goals in the last 2 games of the series against Montreal. Those are the guys to look to, but I think both goalies are going to be as advertised here.
If we fast forwarded, and I told you the Caps won this series in 6 or 7, other than outstanding goaltending, what would be the next biggest reason for them moving on?
Improved special teams. It was really one of the things, at least statistically. I know in talking with some of the guys in the room, I said, listen, yeah, they gave up 5 goals on the power play to Montreal, but it wasn't as bad as that indicated. And I said, okay, I can buy that, but it still happened, and it can't happen, not against Carolina. And they are very good on the power play. So getting Alexei Protas back is huge for that. The penalty kill must rise to the occasion and really, first of all, don't give them a lot of chances, but when they're going to get some, make sure that you are killing as well as you know how and as well as you've done all year. And the power play I thought was okay. Ovechkin gets a couple of goals that way. They ended up with 3. They were really quiet in the middle of the series on the power play. Better special teams on both sides of it. Not that they were horrendous, because they weren't, but statistically, you can't give these guys much. If you're giving them on special teams, if you lose the special teams battle, you will not win the series. I think even if it's close, even if it's even, that's okay. This team at 5-on-5 was dominant against Montreal, and I think they will do well at 5-on-5 against Carolina too. But don't open the door on special teams. Do that, and I think they're going to be okay.
2 quick ones to end. In watching against Montreal, I'm not a guy watching a lot of hockey during the regular season. What was obvious to me is the Caps were just bigger, more physical, and Montreal was sort of top line dependent on scoring. What will I notice more than anything else when it comes to watching Carolina?
I think the physical part is, you think hitting and you think, lining guys up and blowing them up, and you'll see some of that. But what I'm looking for tonight is Pierre-Luc Dubois' line, who was just terrific in shutting down, the Caulfield line for the most part in the Montreal series. That line is going to get tasked. That's McMichael, that's Wilson, and that's Dubois. They're going to get a whole lot of Sebastian Aho and Andrei Svechnikov and Jackson Blake. That's their top line. They're very good. They're very skilled. They had an outstanding series against New Jersey. Devils just were blown out of the water by that line alone. Pierre-Luc Dubois only had 2 assists in the first round. He didn't have a goal. Makes 0 difference to me, because the offense would be great, but the D-zone starts, and what he was able to do defensively on that side of the puck to be able to limit those chances, limit those shots on goal. When you look up at the board tonight, you're looking for something to watch. Look what their shots on goal are at the end of the first period. If it's 15, that's a problem. If it's 6, that means things are going pretty well, and they're going to get their chances. But if the Dubois line is able to match and keep those guys to the outside, limit their multiple chances. They're a team that feeds off momentum, and when they don't have it, you can starve them out a little bit, especially when you have last change. But the shots are going to matter, because if they're getting those in between the dots chances and following up with second opportunities, that means things are going poorly. But we didn't see a lot of that in the Montreal series,
right.
and hopefully that'll be the same here tonight.
All right, prediction?
Caps are going to win. It's going to go long. I really feel that this team is special. They did not get to the second round to fail. Carolina could easily beat them, and with the offense that they have and all the things I just said. But if Logan Thompson is a goalie that he was in the first round, if they get the offense that they have and they have gotten from guys like McMichael, now you get Protas back if he can contribute, if Ovechkin can continue to be able to get chances. I don't see this series going any less than 6 games. It's going to go long. There's going to be 2 trips to Raleigh here. You're going to have to withstand and maybe win a game on the road if you end up dropping one at home. Hopefully they don't. But I think in a long series, if you make the physical investment in the series early, make it hurt, and keep creating chances and be responsible defensively, Capitals can absolutely move on to the round of 4.
I enjoyed this. Thanks. Have a great call tonight, John. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yep. John Walton, everybody. When we come back, Tush Push appears to be in trouble again. More on that next.
All right, yesterday the Washington Nationals were rained out, so today they will re-rack and take on the Cleveland Guardians twice in a doubleheader right here on the Team 980. Pre-games with Charlie and Dave starts at 3:05. 2 thrilling NBA finishes last night. The Knicks rallied from a 20-point deficit to beat the Boston Celtics in overtime 108-105. The Nuggets fought back and stole a win off the Oklahoma City Thunder. Jokic put up 42 points and 22 rebounds in the victory. Clemson and Notre Dame football programs have announced a home-and-home series set to begin in 2027, and the 2 football titans will face off through 2038. The series works independently of the ACC structure and does not count as one of Notre Dame's 5 ACC games. The Caps will finally take on the Carolina Hurricanes after nearly a week off. Logan Thompson expected to get the start pregame at 6:45 on 106.7 The Fan. John Walton is on the call. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980 and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
So this from Mark Maskey yesterday at the Washington Post. The tush push, remember last week at the league meetings, was given kind of a reprieve. They discussed it, but they didn't act on it. They were going to come back and discuss it more. Well, Maskey writes, that may have been only temporary. The owners are scheduled to meet this month and are expected to consider a revised proposal that would prohibit a teammate from pushing or pulling a ball carrier anywhere on the field. The person familiar with the situation said the reworked proposal, if ratified by the owners, would serve to ban the tush push. Here's a quote from a person with the knowledge of the matter on condition of anonymity. Quote, they're going to clean the whole play up to prohibit pushing or pulling anywhere on the field, closed quote. Think about the running back that gets almost, stood up at the 11-yard line, and then here come two offensive linemen to push him 5, 6, 7 yards, down to the 2-yard line. That would be outlawed along with the tush push. Sounds like it's got a really good shot if they clean up the whole play. Done for the day. Back tomorrow. Chris is next.